for introducing me, Vijay Gopikatru, and thank you for inviting me to your gathering, Bhakti Vriksha gathering. And I think with many of you we haven't met yet, and so Vijay Gopikatru made a very mysterious statement about one other special guest, so I guess I'll have to start with disclosing the secret. And this special guest is really small. You wouldn't be able to see him so easily, but small doesn't mean that he's less important, because whom we are talking about is none other than the Supreme Lord himself, who appeared as mountain called Govardhan Mountain, and any stone from that mountain which was held personally by Krishna, as Sri Krishna himself declared before he even lifted the mountain, that this hill is not different from him, and therefore devotees of Krishna are worshipping stones from Govardhan as Krishna. And my spiritual master wanted me to worship a stone from Govardhan on his behalf, and I guess he likes traveling so much that I have to accompany him everywhere, so it's not that I'm traveling, it's he's traveling. And so I come along with him. Any of you would like to see Giriraj Govardhan? Yes. Okay. So I think we'll have to reveal him. Normally, I feel very undeserving if the flower garland is offered to me, because I feel sorry for all the poor flowers who have to sacrifice their lives. But because Giriraj is here, so all these flowers they were offered to Giriraj. And so I don't feel bad when the garland is offered. So we'll place him next to Radha Gopinath, and I suppose you would have to have a little bit of patience before you see him closely. But later you can always come and have darshan. Jai Giriraj Govardhan ki jai. So the topic today is the most important topic for all of us, and that is the holy name of Krishna, which I'm sure all of you know. This is specifically maha mantra we're chanting on a regular basis, and we'll discuss that topic briefly, and then we can have a discussion on those bases. But before we do that, we will offer our respects to the spiritual masters, Vaishnavas, and the Supreme Lord. Om Gyanti Mirandasya Gyananjana Shlokaya Chaksharam Militam Yana Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthatam Yana Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadam Mayam Dadati Swapadantikam Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Devacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So, as Sri Krishna recommends in the very central chapter of Bhagavad Gita, in one of the central verses of the central chapter of Bhagavad Gita, that great devotees, great saintly personalities always engaged in kirtan, glorifying Krishna. This is chapter 9, text 14. Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantasya dridhavrata namasyantasya mam bhaktya nityayukta upasate. He says, great souls, they always engaged in kirtan. Satatam kirtayanto mam. They glorify me all the time. Yatantasya dridhavrata. They endeavor to please me with their service, and namasyantasya mam bhaktya. They always offering their respects to me. And nityayukta upasate, they always engaged in these three types of activities. And so, chanting of the holy name is a very important part of, we say our spiritual practices, but it's not just our spiritual practices, it's any spiritual practices, in fact. Of any spiritual tradition of this planet, it's always based on chanting the holy names of the Lord, whether it is Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Judaism, or Sikhism, or Hinduism, Vaishnavism. It's always chanting the holy name, because this is the foundation of spiritual advancement for any human being. And so we're lucky as human beings, we can chant the holy name. So many animals are bereft of that opportunity, unfortunately. And as one actually Muslim poet says in his song, comparing our tongue with a bird, he says, dear bird of my tongue, please, instead of vibrating so many material sound vibrations, please chant the holy names of the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, if you waste your time and refuse to chant the holy name, when this body will fall dead and will be placed on the cremation wood, and then when the mouth will be surrounded by fire, you will also burn to ashes. And so it will be inglorious end of yours, dear bird. So before that happens, please don't waste time and chant the holy name. And there are so many stories in the scripture which are explaining the power of the holy name. And one of the well-known stories is how a hunter, whose name was, nobody actually knows his name, but he was called Mrigari, which means the enemy of animals, specifically enemy of deer. And so he had that habit. He was killing animals, but he was not killing them completely. He was injuring them, and he was leaving them to bleed to death, and they were, of course, suffering from pain. And then he was a very cruel man. And he was also he was killing the animals like that. And one day there was a great saintly personality, Narad Muni, who was passing along that path. And he saw those animals who were suffering. And then he saw that hunter who was injuring the animals, and he was asking him, "Why are you doing this?" And the hunter said, "Well, it just brings me pleasure to see the misery of all these animals." Right? And then Narad Muni said, "But you know, it's really bad. If you give pain to other living beings, the same kind of pain will come to you." And the hunter couldn't understand the philosophy, so Narad Muni, by his mystic powers, had to make him foresee the future, how he is going into hellish regions of the universe as a result of his sins, and all the animals he tortured, they are attacking him from all the sides. And then this hunter, he became very scared, and he repented of his sinful activities, and then he said, "How can I, avoid this terrible fate?" And then Narad Muni said, "Well, there is only one way. How can you become purified of all your sins? And that is through chanting of the holy names." And so, but the hunter said, and you have to give up your hunting also. But then the hunter said, "Well, I can do the chanting, but if I give up the killing of the animals, how do I survive? Because this is my sustenance, this is how I maintain myself and my family." And Narada Muni said, "Don't worry, if you give up your simple activities, if you give up your hunting, I will make sure that you are maintained in your life." And then Narad Muni, the hunter believed Narad Muni, and so he gave up, he broke his bow, and he gave up his hunting. And then, according to the instruction of Narad Muni, he planted tulsi plant next to his house, and he was chanting the holy name, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And he was going around the tulsi plant, and Narad Muni said, "I will arrange for your food and everything else, don't worry." And so what happened next? Because, he was really cruel hunter, and everyone knew about it. And then suddenly everyone heard that he completely transformed, and from cruel hunter he turned into a sadhu. So it was a shocking news, and so many people, they just couldn't believe the rumors, so they went to see with their own eyes, and then they saw that hunter chanting the holy name and worshipping tulsi plant, and they were very surprised. And they realized that by the mercy of Narad Muni, this hunter became saint. He turned into a saint. And as it is traditional in India, in Vedic culture, if you go to the temple or if you go to see saintly personality, you have to bring some gift with you. And so many people started coming and bringing so many gifts and so much food to that hunter that he was really surprised. And he said, my guru, Narada Muni, is sending me too much. I can't even use it all. Right? I suppose he started Food for Life program there and then. He doesn't say, but maybe. Because he had to use the surplus somehow. Right? And then Narada Muni came back and he saw that hunter with his friend Parvat Muni, and they were very surprised because that hunter, he really changed, because he wanted to offer his pranams, dandavat to his guru, but then he saw ants on the path and he was gently moving ants to the side not to crash them. And then Narad Muni and Parvat Muni were speaking that this hunter really transformed. He was torturing and killing so many animals, and now, after he started chanting Hare Krishna, he doesn't even want to disturb few ants. And so, this is the power of the holy name. And we may say, oh, you know, it is written so many centuries ago, and nobody actually knows how much of it is true. Maybe, you know, someone may say, maybe these are all made up stories, right? But then we should witness the modern day pastimes of the holy name and modern day representative of Narad Muni, Srila Prabhupada, who actually transformed the lives of so many people around the world. And of course, many of you are new, quite new to this movement, and so you haven't had an experience of what's happening on the global scale in terms of the development of the movement. But there are so many people like myself who do not even belong to Hindu background, and we're all taking to the chanting of the names of Krishna, and our lives are transformed in many, many ways, right? But many of us, like myself, we were not better than that hunter, living very, very sinful lives. And so by the power of the chanting of the holy name, it all changed. And of course, it's a kind of question which I come across often, you know, like many of you look at me and you think, how this strange character like that could become a devotee? So, and I suppose it would be kind of logical to say a few words, and especially, you know, taking into account that I come from Islamic or Muslim background, which is kind of additional element of surprise there. Even though we have many, many devotees from that background, actually not only in present times, but beginning from the times of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And for many centuries, it's been quite a traditional, even though Muslims, they want to brag that, you know, that Islam is something ultimate, and whoever, you know, follows Islam, they never give it up for anything else, but these are all complete lies. Anyone who comes across Hare Krishna movement cannot resist to be attracted. And so, I think some of you might know some parts of it, how it happened in my case, which is, in a sense, very much relevant to our today's topic, because it all happened in my life by the mercy of the holy name. Even though I kind of believed in God and I followed, Islamic tradition to some extent, but I was always wondered, if there is God, then how does he look like? And where does he live? And what he is doing? So all these questions, they kept bothering me. And of course, the major question was, if he is my origin, if he created me, what is the purpose of my life? What he created me for? In other words, what can I really do for him, right? And so I could never find answer to these questions in none of the scriptures like Bible or Quran, or I also looked into Buddhist scriptures. I could never find any answer. But then I believed in God because, whenever I prayed, I would always have response. I would always have my prayers answered. So I was convinced that He is there. But I wanted to know more about Him. But then it was a communist country, and I was, in my student days, I was a kind of fighter against the communist rule. And I always wanted to know more about anything connected to spirituality, but at that time, because of the communist restriction, it was very hard to get any spiritual information, because all the religions, they were kind of, suppressed. And the main source of any spiritual information was in from communist, books or brochures or TV programs, which was of course always blasphemous. But you could get at least something. And so one time I came across a pamphlet which was blaspheming different religious groups. And of course it was said that all these strange religious groups, they only exist in the Western countries, and none of them, luckily, is in Russia. Right? And so they were describing all these different religious groups in a very critical light, that they cheat people, etc., and they exploit people's sentiments and all these kind of things. And then I came across a description of one religious group, which was given a specific priority. It was obvious that author made a special effort to present these groups in the worst possible way. And the kind of description given was that members of this cult, they are completely crazy people. And why are they crazy? Because men are dressed in bed sheets and women are dressed in curtains. Right? And you can imagine this kind of information is given to someone who had no exposure to Indian culture at all, right? So of course the author was talking about dhotis and saris. And so not only they dressed in this strange way, but they also smear dirt over their foreheads, if you're recognizing tilak, right? And also men are shaving their heads, but not completely. Part of the head remains unshaved. And after they do that, they go out on the street and they try to sell people very strange books which no one can understand, and harass people for money. And if they are not successful, if people are ignoring them, then out of frustration, sometimes they murmur, or sometimes they shout out loudly meaningless words. And some quote was given. What were the meaningless words? Hare Krishna, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Not even full Maha Mantra, but I guess the author didn't want to risk putting full Maha Mantra, so he just put few words. But then after reading this brochure, after reading the article, I was thinking, this is lie. Because first of all, I had a kind of prejudiced attitude towards this brochure, because communists were my enemies. And so, the logic that enemy of my enemy is my friend worked out. So I thought, if communists, they hate these people so much, this must be the best people of all. And I will never believe that these people are crazy, because no crazy people can ever follow discipline and chant the same words. Of course, crazy people, they may, utter different meaningless words, it's true, but it would never be a case that crazy people would become organized in such a way and they would repeat the same words. And also, just upon looking at the words, Hare Krishna, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, I was thinking, these words must have very deep meaning though. And I want to discover what is the meaning of those words. And so I became very curious, and I started asking my friends, do you know about these Hare Krishnas? And one of my friends said, yes, I know. That I know one of them, and I'm taking some books from him to read. And I said, can you show me these books? Maybe I can get some books to read of you. And then he gave me a couple of books, small books. Like, I think it was Easy Journey to Other Planets, and the other book was Ishopanishad. And then, while reading these books, I would always bump into the references to Bhagavad Gita. As you know, Prabhupada would always give references to Bhagavad Gita in all his purports. And I was asking my friend, what is that Bhagavad Gita? All these books, they talk about Bhagavad Gita. Do you have that Bhagavad Gita? And then he said, oh, now you're asking about this. It is really dangerous. Because this book, if anyone will see me having this book, what to speak of giving this book to you, both of us will go to jail for a very long time. It was true, because Hare Krishna devotees were there in Russia, and they were heavily prosecuted at that time. If any of you read the Salted Bread book, you would know what we're talking about. It was very heavy. But I knew that it's probably true. But then I said, anyway, can I at least see the book? And he said, yeah, okay, I'll show you the book. And then we'll have to meet in the place where no one would be able to see us. And so we did that, and then he was hiding the book under his coat. And then he looked around, no one was seeing, so he said, this is the book. And then I had the privilege of holding Bhagavad Gita in my hands and kind of, browsing through. And I became very interested because it was talking about yoga. And I was very interested in yoga. And of course, at that time I was more interested in mystic yoga, developing superhuman abilities through practicing yoga. This is how I perceived yoga, that you can fly through the sky, or become telepathic and control other people's minds, put the thoughts into other people's minds. To be honest, this is what I was specifically interested in. You know? Not only read other people's minds, but put the thoughts into other people's minds. I was really young, I was 17 or so. And so I was thinking, okay, yoga sounds really interesting, I want to do that. But then I said, can I have Bhagavad Gita to read? He said, no way, I can't give this book to you. I have to take it back. I said, I'll pay you any money you want, please. Give me the book. He said, no, I don't want to risk, so I cannot. So no matter how much I pleaded, he refused. And I was so sad. And then for the next 2 years, I was asking everyone I knew about Bhagavad Gita, and I couldn't get a copy. And after I already gave up all hopes. But yes, one thing I've started doing is that in all the books, the chanting of Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is encouraged. And so, of course, I could understand that Hare Krishna Mantra is a way to connect to Krishna. And once you connect to Krishna, who is the Supreme Lord, then, it's like sky is the limit, right? Things will start happening in life. And I firmly believe that. And because I had that desire, to influence other people like that, and I was practicing some other techniques, how to influence other people through, it's not telepathy, it's something else. I can't even remember the name now, but, one thing which kind of shows that you're achieving some success with that, putting your thoughts in other people's minds, is that if someone is standing, and turning away from you, then you look at that person, and that person is supposed to turn and look at you, then you would know that you're connected with that person's mind. I couldn't even do that, no matter how hard I tried. And so I was kind of disappointed that all my practices, they don't yield any result. But then I decided, let me try chanting Hare Krishna and see if it will work out. And I was doing hitchhiking, not because I had to, but because it was kind of fun way to travel at the time. And I was kind of associated with hippie group, and I looked very strange for Russia, right? I had very long hair and torn jeans, so I looked very anti-Soviet. And so, it was pretty hard for me to hitchhike because all the, drivers, they were afraid of me. They didn't want to stop. They were thinking, who is that strange character? And then I thought, I remembered the Hare Krishna mantra, and I thought, if Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is real, then I would chant Hare Krishna and I would make the first car stop. And to make sure that I'm not deluding myself, I decided not to even lift my hand. I was just standing on the roadside and I was chanting Hare Krishna while looking at the driver of the, approaching car and telling him in my mind, stop the car, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Surprisingly enough, the car stopped. And in order to help me to understand that it was not done voluntarily by the man, when I opened the door of the car, he looked really scared. He was like, what can I do for you? Shall I give you a lift? I said, yes, sure. Please sit in my car. And so then, he took me to wherever I told him to go. And he was driving like that, sitting away from me. And I knew exactly that it is, somehow something or somebody inside forced him to stop, even though he didn't really want to. And so I had a few other experiences like that, which helped me to understand that, Hare Krishna mantra is real, it really works. Whatever experiments I made, they always proved that yes, Krishna is there. Like one time, I'm quite bad with directions, and I've lost my way to going somewhere, and it was past midnight, and there was no one around to ask, absolutely. And at that time there were no mobile phones, there was no way to find the place. And so I told Krishna, if you're there, I'll just chant Hare Krishna, and I'll just go somewhere, and I'll find that place. And this is what I did. I started chanting Hare Krishna, and I started just walking somewhere. Believe it or not, in 15 minutes I was standing in front of the door I was looking for. And then, after a few experiences like that, I became completely convinced, okay, it's working 100%, I don't even have to doubt. And then I was feeling so blissful, and so one of my friends, also from the group, and I told him about the Hare Krishna mantra and Krishna, and he started chanting Hare Krishna as well. And so we knew a little bit, and of course for us, and I guess for most of the people of the planet, everybody is recognizing that India is the most spiritual country on the planet, right? Because India is always been the country of mysteries and miracles, of, people with supernatural powers, yogis, sadhus, and you name it. Everybody is there in India, right? And so India was always very attractive to myself and to my friend as well. And so, but at that time, we just couldn't go to India because the borders were closed. And in order to get out of the country, one had to go through impossible procedures and pay a lot of money, which we just couldn't afford. And then we've decided to try and cross the border of Russia illegally and go through Pakistan into India. And with that aim in mind, we boarded the train and we went to Central Asia. And when we came there, I had some money, and we were not practicing much, but at least we were chanting Hare Krishna without beads, just like that, singing Hare Krishna, and we were trying to follow vegetarian lifestyle. So this was our level of following spiritual practices. And then I went to the shop to buy something, and then I was passing through a very troublesome area of the town, and I was surrounded by some youngsters from some criminal gang, and I looked really strange there in Central Asia, what to speak. I was living in St. Petersburg, at least, they were exposed to something Western, but in there they could never imagine anyone with long hair and looking like that. And so these youngsters, they surrounded me and they said, anyone who is passing here has to give us all the money. So quickly, all the money out of your pocket. And at that time, I had a kind of interesting perception that I couldn't see whatever's happening around me as something real. I perceived everything as if a kind of play or a game Krishna puts up. And so I was thinking, okay, what's Krishna's arranging here? Why did he send all these boys? And I just couldn't take them seriously, you know. For me, they were like characters from some play, from some comedy. And I kind of looked at them and I smiled. And, you know, they were like that serious. They tried to rob me. And one of them, to make his case stronger, he said, come on, you have to give us all the money now, otherwise we'll kill you. And he pulled out a blade and he put to my throat. And he said, look, if you don't give your money now, I'm cutting your throat and you'll bleed to death. You choose what you want to do, right? And I looked at, you know, I looked at his face. I looked him in the eyes and I saw that his eyes were not steady. And, you know, he was really nervous. And then I looked at his hand and his hand was shaking, right? And I was thinking, this is weird. You know, he's trying to scare me, but he himself is scared to death. How is that possible? And then the whole situation looked so comical for me that I started laughing. And then he got completely bewildered. And he, you know, looked at me, and then he looked at all his friends, and he said, I think he's completely crazy. Let's run away from here. And then they dispersed. And I was thinking, oh, what was that all about? And then went ahead to do the purchases and all. So it was interesting. And of course, you know, I was chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra either in my mind all the time or verbally. And so I was completely convinced, you know, if I'm chanting Hare Krishna, what wrong can ever happen to me, right? And so, and yeah, Krishna was manifesting himself. And then I became so convinced that if we chant Hare Krishna, Krishna will make all the arrangements and there is nothing impossible. And then we decided to cross the border. And I mean, our equipment was consisting of, you know, some rubber shoes and ropes. That was all. To go into the mountains, because we decided to cross the border through the mountains. And then just in case, you know, someone from inside told me, better you check out what's happening in the mountains, visit the local museum. And so we went into the local museum and we saw the taxiderms of different animals and birds living in the mountains, and everybody was there. Wolves were there, tigers were there, bears were there, everybody, you know, so many predators. And it kind of cooled me down a little bit. I was thinking, you know, it looks like it's really dangerous up there. But anyway, I thought, doesn't matter, Krishna will take care. We don't have to worry, we just have to go ahead. And then, believe it or not, with these rubber shoes and with these ropes, you know, like flimsy, thin ropes. And we also got, you know, few blocks of chocolate to have some high-calorie food on the way. And, I mean, it was completely crazy idea, absolutely mad. But, you know, at the time we just didn't care. And so we started going up into the mountains. And we went up a few 100 feet, and then we saw a woman who was running around in a very frantic mood, and she was like crying and calling for help. And we were like confused what's happening. So we asked her what's going on, and she said, I lost my husband here in the mountains, and he's so desperate, I think he's trying to commit suicide. And could you please help me find my husband? And we thought, okay, Krishna is arranging something, so we have to help that woman. So we started searching for the man, and sure enough, in a very short time, we found him standing on the cliff, ready to jump down. He was actually serious. And from the distance we started shouting, "Don't worry, you don't have to end your life now. Krishna will take care of all your problems. We'll help you out." And he was like really confused. Who are these guys? And then, like we came to him, he was waiting for us, and then from both sides we started preaching to him, explaining him about Krishna. And he said, wait, it's really confusing. Let's go down. I'll invite you to my house and you can explain to me properly who is your Krishna and how he can help me. And then, we came to his house, and he served us some fruit or something like that. And we actually told him about Krishna and how Krishna is so amazing and how he transforms lives of so many people, and if you also start chanting Hare Krishna, then your life will also change. And we were asking him what was the reason he wanted to commit suicide, and actually he was in a very desperate situation because it was really corrupt at that time. Central Asia, it was one of the most corrupted places in Russia, and his boss at his work was very whimsical personality, and he was doing some crazy things, and he wanted to expose him, but the boss was too powerful, and then with the money he managed to cover himself up, and also he paid the police, and he got him arrested and put to jail under false accusation. And he served the sentence in the prison, and after he was released, the boss paid more money to make sure that he will not find any job and he would not have any means for his sustenance. And he was saying, this is so crazy, this communist system is just ruining people's lives, and I don't know what to do. I have no money, I can't maintain my family, I'm completely desperate. So we kind of preached to him, don't worry, just start chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna will arrange something, because we were completely convinced of that. He said, okay, I'll try that. But he asked, what are you doing here? Why were you in the mountains? And then we completely knew that we can disclose our whole plan to this man, and he will not tell it to any authority, right? And so we told him that yes, we are also completely, disillusioned with this system, and we want to escape to India. And he said, how did you want to do that? We said, well, just walk through the mountains. And he said, do you realize what is the distance? It's like more than 1,000 kilometers through Himalayas, right? Because these were Himalayas on this Central Asian side, right? The Himalayas are so vast, they're covering many countries, right? From Chinese side, it's called Tibet, and from Central Asia side, it's called Pamir Mountains. So we wanted to go into Himalayas from that side, and of course come out on Indian side. That was the plan. And it was such a long distance, he said, first of all, it's very long walk through the mountains. And second of all, it's extremely cold up there. And all the, you can freeze to death easily because there is no shelter there. How will you, stay overnight? Even during the day you can freeze. Once you stop moving, you'll freeze to death, basically. As simple as that. And you don't have any gear. And second of all, the trails in the mountains are so narrow, and they're also covered with ice. And even the mountain goats, they slip and they fall and they die. So how do you think you can cross through? But But even if you will not freeze, even if you will not slip and fall, then there are so many hungry animals in the mountains, and they're just waiting for someone to come. They're just waiting for their lunch for many days. And so, you know, once you're there, you're just exposed. You're just there at their mercy. And he said, even if you survive all these things, you know, cold and slippery trails and wild animals, then there is another danger which is even worse than all the previous ones. And these are border patrol. And they, you know, because it's like such a difficult place to guard, there is no border stationed in the mountains at all. It's open, but what they do with a helicopter, they just go over the mountains on a regular basis. And you know, it's all snow there, so you can easily spot any human being moving alone, right? And once they see human being moving alone, they recognize it cannot be anyone else but the trespasser, and they just shoot people. That's it. They don't even bother like to check who is that, you know, they just don't care. That's it, and they just leave the body and go back. It's a very simple job. And so, he said, with these factors, you practically stand zero chances. You know, it's like, maybe good idea, but it's impossible. I'll be honest with you, you have no chances. And then I thought, okay, maybe Krishna is warning us. Yeah. But then I said, what's your advice? He said, I have an easier option for you to go through the border. If one of you have driving license, you can get a job as a truck driver in one company here. And those trucks, they go along the borderline of Pakistan, and there is one motorway through Pakistan going to India. And all you have to do is to break the border on the truck and just full speed go ahead. Of course they will chase you, they will be chased, they will try to shoot you, but at least you have better chances like that. And I just imagine myself the scene, you know, like we're escaping on and there is a chase and shooting from behind. And we were not into these kind of things at all. So, you know, we just realized, you know, it's not really worth it. And so we gave up the idea, we came back. Luckily, because otherwise I would not probably sit here right now and tell you all these things. But yeah, I mean, I had so many experiences there and then, and throughout all the years, you know, the events I'm mentioning were probably happening around 86. So it's nearly 30 years from now. And so throughout all these years, I had so many amazing experiences, and not only myself, but I've seen in the lives of so many other people who have taken up the chanting, how their lives are miraculously transformed. And this is why many times when Srila Prabhupada was challenged, and he was, you know, someone was telling him, Swamiji, you're a big yogi, so can you show a miracle? And Prabhupada laughed and he said, yes, I can. Just look at my miracle. And then he would point at his disciples. And he said, look, this is real miracle, right? I mean, you can do some magic tricks, very cheap magic tricks without very little, you know, preparation or training. But this was real miracle. He said, look at these young Western boys and girls. They were drug addicts, they were drunkards, and they were doing so many crazy things. and now they turned into saintly personalities. And so this is the real miracle of Prabhupada, that he's changing the whole world through the process of Krishna consciousness, which starts with the chanting of the holy names. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And if you follow that process, you will have your own proof that it does work. It changes your life for better. Let's see. How many of you do chant Hare Krishna on regular basis, no matter whether it is much or little, but something every day on your beats? Okay. And how many of you can confirm that it really helps and it really transforms your life for better, changes your life for better? So we can see that we don't have to believe in something other people telling us, because we can check it out ourselves. Our own lives can be the proof that this process works. And so the more you chant, then the more of the positive changes you can experience. And that's why, those who do chant regularly and seriously dedicate themselves to this process, they seriously encourage everyone else to also try and dedicate yourself to that process more, because then you will have more of spiritual experiences and more positive changes in your life. And so this is what Vijay Gopikesh Prabhu is hoping to achieve through our little session, that you all take it more seriously and you increase your spiritual standards, and then once you have more of your spiritual experiences and you see the changes, then you'll become more convinced and you'll advise the same thing to other people. And then we can change the lives of unlimited numbers of people for better. Okay, so thank you all very much. I hope it was interesting. And so shall we stop?
Any questions?
Okay, questions? Yes.
How did you meet your Guru Maharaj?
How did I meet my spiritual master? Well, yes, Shalendra Dyumna Swami. There was, I joined the movement fully when the prosecutions were reduced, that many devotees were released from jail, but still the movement was not completely legal. Some prosecutions were still there, and European BBT, European Publishing Trust, published 200,000 Prabhupada's books, primarily Bhagavad Gita, Krishna book, and teachings of Lord Chaitanya in Russian language, and they, in a very beautiful, cover and everything else, and they sent the whole load of these books to Moscow for devotees as a gift to distribute these books and use the profits for developing the movement. And so once these books arrived to the custom, and 200,000 books, it's a lot, believe me. And the custom officers, they contacted their bosses, and it went all the way to the top, and they realized, okay, maybe we don't want Hare Krishnas in jail anymore, because there was a huge campaign to get devotees out of jail, and of course Sri Prahlad, who many of you know, was leading that campaign, and it was successful, but they didn't want devotees to start, distributing these books widely, because they recognized it will be a real explosion in the country, spiritual explosion, right? Hare Krishna explosion. So they arrested the books, and they didn't want to let the books out. And so once we learned about it, then the publishing group in Russia requested ISKCON leadership to help. And so all the centers were contacted in Soviet Union, former Soviet Union, and all the devotees were requested to come from all over to Moscow and organize harinams of protest to get the books out. And so I was fortunate enough to take part in that. So we came and we were doing, for over a week, every single day, we had between 8 and 10 hours of harinam non-stop, and combined with protests, and it was serious. I mean, I remember coming back home and we were not like eating anything all day long, but I was so fatigued and exhausted that I couldn't even have strength to eat anything. I would just crash out at night, and then I would just get up in the morning, and by the evening time I had no voice left. Like, you know, singing Hare Krishna at the top of your lungs for 10 hours, you know, is quite a serious strain on your vocal cords. And so, you know, I would lose my voice by the end of the day, and I could hardly move. And I was thinking, okay, next day I will be incapacitated. But when the next day would come, my voice would come back, my strength would come back. Of course, I was much younger then. And we were carrying on like that. And of course, we were prosecuted. Like, police was trying to arrest us a couple of times. They were unsuccessful because devotees, they were so much together and they would protect each other from the police trying to arrest them, that police just couldn't do it. You know, like, they would grab one devotee, but the other devotees would grab that devotee, and they just couldn't. They tried to beat the devotees, but still devotees wouldn't let them arrest anyone. And it was really amazing because, yeah, anyway, that at some point we had a riot forces attacking us, and you know, these guys with shields and helmets and rubber sticks in their hands, and so they would beat us up quite heavily. I saw, you know, serious beating, and I was also beaten. And then we were arrested and brought to the police station. Of course, they were chanting Hare Krishna all the way through. And I was like checking my body, and I didn't have a scratch or a bruise, or I didn't have any pain in my body. So I was surprised. I was thinking, you know, I was beaten quite badly. I don't feel anything. What happened? And then I was asking other devotees, were you beaten? Yeah. You have any scratches, bruises? You have any pain? No, nothing. But no devotee felt anything. So it was as if, you know, some divine protection was over us. They were trying to beat us so badly, but none of the devotees suffered at all, even slightly. Anyway, there were so many other things. I don't want to take too much of the time, you know, describing how we were resisting the arrests and everything else. Ultimately, they just had to release us because it was too much dealing with us. We were too much together. But anyway, we were in that kind of, you know, militant mood at the time, fighting for Krishna. And then the whole Moscow was buzzing that just a day or two before our arrival, Srila Indradimna Maharaj was in Moscow. And he held programs, and devotees were listening to his recordings, which were very kind of special recordings. He was describing his feats, how he went into wild Amazon jungles and was preaching to Aborigines, and how he was going to, Ahobalam, his pilgrimages and all his adventures he was describing. And so I was very impressed, and all other devotees were very impressed too, and everyone was having, his pictures. And immediately upon hearing, what he's talking about, and upon seeing him, I made the decision that this is my guru. And I don't want to have any other guru, even though not many devotees knew him, and he hardly had any disciples in Russia, but yeah, I made that decision, and I'm happy that I made this decision, because we have very close relationships, and I think it's my great fortune that I met him in my life. All right. Okay. Let the boy. Sorry?
How did you reach India?
How did I reach India? Oh, it's a long story. I think we'll have to wait for another time. Anyway, it's also a very mysterious story, because...
Make it brief.
Briefly. Okay. I reached India when I never tried for it, and I had no money. And then one day I found myself standing on the banks of Ganga with beads in hands. So this is brief. If you want to know the details, it will take a little longer. But anyway. Okay, okay, show us.
Prabhuji, then how did you get the first Bhagavad Gita of your own copy?
Oh, how did I got my own copy of Bhagavad Gita? Yes, it was very amazing that, and I think Krishna is doing that many times. When I was striving so much and searching for Bhagavad Gita and asking everyone, I could not get it. And then one day I lost hope, and I thought, okay, it's not going to happen anymore. And as soon as I told that to Krishna, like they say never. On that day, I was walking along the street, and it was in Baku, Azerbaijan, my native place, where I was born. And one boy approached me, and he said, I have some very special spiritual books. Would you be interested? And immediately inside I knew, this is it. This is Bhagavad Gita. And then he just pulled out Bhagavad Gita. And I was ready to jump, in the air, because I was so happy, finally. And I said, please, can you sell me this book? I can pay you any money. He said, of course, no problem. And he, quoted some ridiculously low price. I was thinking, this is crazy. How can he part with Bhagavad Gita, just asking for, pennies? Of course, for some people it was, quite substantial, but for me, like comparing to the value of Bhagavad Gita, it was nothing. And then I just grabbed Bhagavad Gita, I took the contacts, and, I started reading Bhagavad Gita, and sharing whatever I read with all the friends of mine, and, basically, whomever I met, I would just have a discussion on Bhagavad Gita. I would tell them, just listen to this one. And I would just read like a page or two, and we would have heated discussions. Some were, quite happy, some were agitated. I lost one of my very close friends because he was working very hard, and then I read him the passage from Bhagavad Gita about, mundane workers who are like donkeys. So he got so offended, he didn't want to know me anymore after that, but anyway, I had interesting experiences.
Maharaj, how long it took to finish Bhagavad Gita?
Oh, to finish Bhagavad Gita. I'm still reading it, sorry. I don't think I'll ever finish because I'm discovering, serious depths in Bhagavad Gita more and more. It's really amazing book. I mean, it's such a multi-dimensional scripture. You can never find the end to it. I don't think it will ever happen, finishing reading Bhagavad Gita. All right, so thank you all very much. So, if you...
I think last question.
Okay, last question.
No, Prabhu, I had the same question.
Okay.
Go.
I had
Okay, last one.
for anyone who is starting into Krishna consciousness, very new to Bhagavad Gita as well as chanting, what would be your key piece of advice?
What
Your
Key
advice
piece.
would be
Key
what
piece
should
of
one
advice.
focus on?
tips, advice for those who start chanting?
Yes. As well as reading Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah, just chant as much as you can. Just have minimum as your standard, whatever you committed to, like whatever number of malas you make, right, every day. But if you have spare time, like Prabhupada would say, don't waste time. If you have time, chant Hare Krishna. And so, yeah, this is the best advice. Chant Hare Krishna and read Bhagavad Gita, and your life will be sublime. It's not very simple. Everything else, Krishna will reveal. Because this process is not hypothetical or theoretical. Once you go forward on this path, you will see it all for yourself. You don't have to believe others. Check it out yourself. Alright, so thank you all very much for your kind attention and enthusiastic participation. We'll be leaving quite soon, so if they can see Giriraj, right? So for those of you who don't know, Giriraj Govardhan is a very special form of Krishna, and one of the specialities is that he is very happy to fulfill any requests you have, any desires you have. You can ask him anything you want, and I know that he helped many devotees in many different ways already. So, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Giriraj Govardhan ki jai, Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Gaur Premanande,
Uttam Shloka Pr.
Samaveta Bhakta Prinda ki jai.